mind my children's iPad. Okay? So, first and foremost, for me today, the glory of my story, my testimony, is for God, right? This testimony is just another example of Christ at work. So, at the last men's breakfast, Pastor Brad touched on a few things. I'm losing it. Like childhood, being a father, and being a man. So, some of you might know a small piece of my testimony from the Van Wyck's Brazil dinner. However, just like a good Shopping Channel ad, but wait, there's more. Okay? So, what I feel compelled to talk about today is manhood and my journey. I don't know what you want me to do with this, Russ, but... so what is a man? Okay? For me, growing up, a man was tough. He did not show emotion. He provided and he protected his family the way that he could. I mean, along with that, riding a Harley, driving a truck, and being an alcoholic is who my stepfather was. My mother tried her best to raise 2 kids in that environment. So, where am I going with this? Well, in my scenario, like I'm sure many others, broken people fostered generational curses of broken people. And I'm trying to paint a picture of how I became who I was. So this upbringing helped mold me into a very introverted person, living with a huge fear of man that was very manipulative, easily offended, foul-mouthed, riddled with negativity, unhappy with myself, and critical of everyone while striving for perfection myself. I would try to control every situation because I trusted one person in this world, me. Somehow, through the grace of God alone, I managed to keep a girlfriend. Or should I say, somehow, she found the strength to stay committed to staying with me. Now remember that image of what I thought a man was just a few moments ago. Tough, emotionless, the provider, the protector. I tried to be all of those things, the only way that I knew how. However, with that shallow viewpoint of what a man was, I was causing huge damage at home and not truly seeing the ripples of what I was doing. Now understand that I thought I was doing what was right, what a man should, making decisions to best keep the family protected and on track in all aspects. But I was going about it all wrong. I was toxic to everyone that I was around. Let me better paint a picture of who I was. I was annoyed with my kids. I was not involved in anything that they were doing. I had no time for them after work. On the weekends, I would find something to occupy my time with something that I needed, or just that I wanted to get done. Growing up, I wanted so badly to be better than my father figure, but I failed to realize that I had become him. I was critical of what they were doing, why they were doing it, forcing upon them a level of perfection that they could never achieve. I was not building them up or empowering them, as I should, but rather tearing them down and deflating their confidence. The only emotions that I knew or shared was a mediocre mood or angry. The undealt with damage inside, the high level of fear of man, combined with my introverted nature, gripped me so tightly. I would manipulate conversations to guilt people into things. I would guilt Cindy into doing things that made me uncomfortable. For example, simply making a phone call to someone would give me anxiety. So I would tell her, oh, I was too busy at work. I needed her help during the day, to do these things. I was controlling. In my mind, trying to do what was best. Money. If she spent any of our money without us talking about it, I was upset. We would argue. However, it was never an issue for me to spend any money. A couple $100 here or there on something that I felt we needed, not a problem. I didn't give Cindy many choices, but to stay at home and watch the kids while they were younger. Paying for someone else to do this would be all the money that she would have made working, so why go to work? I would not help around the house, but at the same time would criticize when things were not done the way that I would have done it. I had various addictions that took my attention away from my family. Video games, cars, pornography, while she carried the burden of the family. I wasn't happy with myself inside, and I did not know how to deal with it. So I thought controlling the world around me would make it better. Needless to say, there was a lot going on. And I'm giving you only a few examples of the man that I had become. When our youngest was old enough to attend school, it was time for Cindy to go back to work. I could no longer continue to afford to carry us and get us out of debt at the same time. The only move that I saw fit for the family, where we needed to be financially, yes. Even in that, though, I had to control it. Cindy had to work a night shift. I had a stable career. Someone had to get the kids on the bus. Somebody had to be there when they got home. This was the only scenario that would have worked, in my mind. So that's what happened. In the wake of this destruction and damage that I was causing, my wife had found comfort in a new night shift position, a sense of freedom from the world at home. She started to grow, not being suppressed by me all the time. Finally, she found the courage and boldness to tell me she was unhappy and wanted out. I was crushed. Remember, I was working so hard in my mind to do the best thing that I could for the family. I thought I was planning everything for our future success. Alas, at this point, I was forced only to look inward. Blaming everybody else for my problems was no longer an option. This is when I started to talk to the Lord. It was my only outlet. We had no family out here. We had no close friends. I started to cry out for help and hope to change who I was. I vowed to fight for my relationship and to not agree with the outcome that I saw before me. Through the grace of God, Cindy agreed to give me some time to change while we sorted things out. It was hard, but I pushed through the laziness. I started to help out. Through wisdom, not of my own, I caught my wicked tongue before I said something out of impulse and thought about a better way to communicate. I stopped my passive-aggressive jabs that I would mask with humor. In about 8 months or so, I had made some real progress. I was able to interact with my kids, show the whole family that I could love them in a different way that they had never seen before. I had emotions. I started to care for others. Life was amazing. Back on track. My threshing was not over. Cindy pulled me aside one day. Her guilt had become too much. And she came clean about some infidelity going on during this period of change. Even though I had changed from my previous self, the years of damage left her with an unbelief that this new man was not real and would not last. I realized at this point, now I was at rock bottom. Instantly, the old man returned. Understand, even though I had cried out to the Lord, I would say at this point, I was not a believer. Rage was the only emotion now. Vengeance surged through my thoughts. I mean, I was working so hard to be a better version of myself, and it was working. How could she do this? I went through all sorts of emotions, but had landed on this chapter being closed. This conversation, for point of reference, took place on a Thursday night. To be specific and exact, it was her birthday, March 10th. Cindy had decided after telling me that after her work that night, she would come home Friday morning and go to her parents. In my mind, decision was made. She needs to get out, and I need legal counsel. The bitterness had come back, and I wanted her to feel the guilt, the punishment of the decision that she had made, and the impact not only it would have on her life, but of that of the kids. And I voiced this opinion just as I did before. I spewed venom with my words, as I did so many times in the past before, to inflict pain. Backtracking a little bit, during the 8 months prior, as well as on this night, I had been communicating with my mother's boyfriend. He was someone that I trusted to talk to. He has his own story, but somebody that at one point had nothing and built himself up to who he is today. So I contacted him Friday after that message the night before. He suggested I come to my sister's with the boys on Saturday, that I needed to be around family and not alone with the boys. I hated that idea. Just wanted to be alone in my emptiness where I felt comfortable. But I felt I should go. My mother and my brother-in-law at this point had no idea what was going on. Somehow found the courage, called them into the garage away from the kids. And for the first time I can remember since being a kid, I broke down crying. Sorry, I lost myself. Now, when I say I was emotionless before, I was. Nobody, not even my wife, had ever seen me cry, shed an emotion, because men didn't cry. Not in my world. They were a rock. You know, I didn't even shed a tear at my biological father's funeral. But this day, I spilled everything. Everything that was going on, and told them I was getting divorced. I muddled my way through that day, just keeping to myself, short answers. I made it back home that night, but that night, my life was changed forever. Through God's mercy and His grace, without an ask for it, I somehow woke up the next morning with unconditional forgiveness for my wife. Something I didn't think I was ever capable of for anyone, let alone someone who just tore my heart out. But it didn't stop there. This forgiveness in my heart was not only for her, but others that I had held resentment on. The Lord had used this terrible situation, as He always does, for good. He went out of His way to intercede into my life, a wicked man, undeserving of it. And he brought me not only to him, but he restored my family in the process. The world and my outlook had changed. That Sunday morning, I messaged Cindy at her parents and asked her to return home to her family that she thought she had lost so we can move forward. Shortly after this, we started coming to Trumpet. We've never been better. We're exactly where the Lord has placed us to be. And we can't be any more thankful. So there's been many details in this testimony that I have skimmed through. However, if I had not, we might be here till worship tomorrow. Just know that what I thought a man was, imprinted on me from my childhood, is not what a man was, and it's not who God called me to be. So today, I testify to his goodness, and through him that we can do all things. We are not defined by our environment or our past once we come to the Lord. We must be open to receiving what he has for us. We must bury that old man and not allow him to define who we are. So my message is one of encouragement, men. Let it go. Bring it to the cross. Leave any condemnation and pick up conviction for the Lord and what he wants to do for you. God has created us in his own image, and we are called to transform our lives into the likeness and image of him. So run from all these evil things. Pursue righteousness and a godly life, along with faith, love, perseverance, and gentleness. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. Rather, bring them up with discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord. And love your wives as Christ loved the church. May he equip you with all you need for doing his will. May he produce in you, through the power of Jesus Christ, every good thing that is pleasing to him. And all glory to him forever and ever. Amen. Thank you.
All right, what amazing testimonies this morning. I wanted to say, Mary's testimony where I think it was your granddaughter said that he had eyes of gold that pierced her heart and overcame her heart with joy, and that he settled her. I want you to know that he is no respecter of persons, that the Lord, his desire is to fill every one of us with joy and to settle everyone's mind and everyone's heart into a place of peace and understanding that he is good and that you are free.
And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death.